What's up, it's your girl AB, and this is another episode of 30, Flirty, and Thriving. I am here today with David McCullar, right? Of Inception. David, what is Inception?
Inception is a mental health gym. It's the first mental health gym. So
tell me what that means.
It's taking mental health into the area that it needs to go into. Typically when you go to a psychologist or psychiatrist, the way they look at mental health is from the psyche, but they miss the body. If you go to like traditional just medicine, they look at the body but take out the mind. So we blend mind and body into what we call the mental health gym. It's helping everyday average people. It's not about if you come in with a diagnosis or anything of that nature, because if you understand our environment that we live in, we can all be diagnosed at any given day, right? So we're all dealing with mental emotional issues. So this is a safe, innovative way to help people to really regain a sense of self.
Okay, so coming into the mental health gym, what can one expect?
And what would you be coming for?
Okay.
You just didn't hear my name. You want to know. You coming in with something.
I think the name sounds very intriguing. Inception, the mental health gym, and it sounds like, okay, mental health gym. Everybody's dealing with some sort of anxiety, depression, or other, mental health, just stress, really, particularly now with COVID and the economy being the way that it is, and the idea of a mental health gym that could potentially work out our minds or work out us beyond our bodies is intriguing, right?
Right. Well, 70 to 90% of doctor visits are due to stress-related illnesses. So that's like everybody.
Absolutely.
Right. So because stress is something that we all deal with, but again, let's go back into what stress is, because when we think about stress, we always think of it as a word, right? Oh, my boyfriend or my girlfriend, they're stressing me. Well, what does that mean? What's really happening? So what's the mechanics behind it is that you have a stressor, and then your body gives a response. Your brain and body responds to that stressor. So what's happening is you go into what's called the fight, flight, or freeze response. And it's not just stress, it's trauma. So if you look at trauma is anything happening too soon, too fast, too sudden can be traumatic. So you can literally win the lottery and still be traumatized. And the reason why I use that example is because when most people hear the word trauma, they think, I never had any trauma. And I think, you were born. That's trauma number one, right? So we've all had traumas. You're never going to be exempt from living in this world without experiencing trauma.
Well, yeah, I think even some of the most exciting times of a lot of people's lives are, even if they're really amazing and exciting, they're traumatic. Getting married, people are very stressed out on their wedding day. Getting the opportunity for, I have a lot of artists and musicians who follow me, and getting up on stage in front of hundreds or thousands of people can be very traumatic, even though it's super exciting. Your body's emotional response to that, I mean, between breathing heavy and sweating, or just feeling like you can't breathe for that matter, it's a traumatic event. Right.
So after that event is over, the issue is that our brain is becoming locked down in that pattern. So now when it's locked down in that pattern, all your faculties that you use to do day-to-day tasks is greatly diminished. And then two, when more stressors come, you're triggered. We all hear the word, oh, I got triggered, right? This is a new thing, I got triggered. Well, what does that mean? That means that the body is still holding on to residual energy that it would use to fight a threat, right? So now you have this cup that's filled up to the brim, and you only have that much room. So when another stressor comes and pours into that cup, what happens? You spill over. So let's think about this. One of the things that's so important to everybody, that everybody always talks about, is relationships, especially between men and women. Why do they fail? It's because our relationships are mimicking our relationships that we had with our parents, and the trauma we experience and the type of programming we experience from them. So as you get older and you find this person who reminds you of your mother or your father, you don't think about it that way, but the energy is there, and now y'all are both doing this. Because the brain is constantly trying to complete the cycle. but it can't complete the cycle because you're stuck. You're stuck in that pattern. So place like this is helping the brain and the body to come out of those patterns, to remove those triggers and give you access back to the present moment.
So let me ask you this. There is a lot of talk, like you said, about triggers, and people are talking about toxic relationships and toxicity, and I feel like the average Joe is a lot more aware of traumatic experiences, of triggers, of toxic relationships than maybe they were 10 or 20 years ago.
Oh, absolutely.
So I think that obviously now is a great time for something like this, but at the same time we have so far to go, and I think a lot of people are still uneducated or uncertain about how how to properly address their mental health.
Right. Well, not just that. I think one of the bigger issues is this, that once you stay in that pattern long enough, you actually began to become familiar with that pattern, and you have a level of certainty towards it. So that even when you can start to move yourself out of that pattern, what happens? You self-sabotage and go back into that pattern. Absolutely. Because that's familiar and that's certain, even though it's bad. Yep. Right? So a friend of mine was telling me about a young man he was mentoring, and the young man called him and he was crying. He said, because he went up someplace somewhere in up north in Michigan, and he called him, he said, what's going on, man? He said, man, I'm so scared. And he said, why are you scared? He said, everybody's treating me so good. Everybody's treating me well. It's like, but you're scared because he's used to the opposite. So that right there, being treated well, is a sign of fear and uncertainty. So no, I don't like that. So it's not so much just, we don't just have to do more educating. People have to break the addiction to their cocktail of cortisol and adrenaline that they're used to. And when you start looking at it this way, it gives you a level of empathy for people without having to it's not a judgment. People aren't morally flawed. They're traumatized, right? So they're not inherently bad people. You can look at a person's behavior and see why they're doing the things that they do. Right. You can cut down a tree and look at that ring of the tree, and they can dictate the weather patterns off the ring of the tree. It's the same thing with the brain and the body. Neurophysiological, your body, you got tension patterns all throughout it, right? So Inception has to unravel the tension patterns with our services. Right.
That's really relatable. I know years ago, probably 10, 15 years ago, I had a cycle that I had recognized in myself in which I had really, really severe anxiety. And whenever things were going too good, I would self-sabotage, like on accident though. And it took years of that happening for me to look and say, there's a pattern here and it has to do with me. But it was my anxiety that would self-sabotage however, I'm like, things are going too good, this is weird. It was kind of like, the gentleman who's like, people are treating me nice, this is weird. It's like, you want to do something to mess it up because it's not normal. It's like, this can't continue, it's scary. And I think that a lot of other people can probably relate as well. So if I'm coming in here and I'm like, look, I've got a lot of anxiety and I self-sabotage and I can't concentrate and I'm just stressed out, my life is crazy, it's busy. What are the services that are offered on a really like I guess elementary level, just if someone to come in here and explain them?
Well, we make it where you don't have to understand the services, because you can pick up your cell phone and ask you how does that work, you don't know. Right. So with all this technology that's very based on a lot of different concepts that are really above our level of thinking, we organize them in a way where you don't have to know to get the benefits, and then two, we group them into basically what we call circuits. So you have the inner reset circuit, which uses 3 different services in 90 minutes. It's a brain body reset circuit, so that's handling with stress and trauma. Okay. So within the first circuit, we have 3 different services in the circuit. So this first one is the magnosphere. So what this is a magnetic therapy, and these 2 rings on each side of the magnosphere is a copper coil running through it. So we send a frequency through it, and it actually creates a unified magnetic field. The reason why that's important is because that's mimicking the frequency of the earth. the earth is very grounding, and grounding has anti-inflammatory properties to it. So when you sit in the magnetosphere, it's really good with anti-inflammatory, central nervous system balancing, which has to do with stress reduction, mood enhancement as well. So this is the first part. It's kind of like priming you to go to the next part of the circuit.
So how long are these sessions?
They're 30 minutes apiece. So the whole circuit is 90 minutes, but each station is 30 minutes.
And what do you experience? Like if I were to sit down and start a session now, would I notice anything different?
Yes. So most people experience deep levels of relaxation, but depending on what you have going on in your life too, you can notice some changes in maybe whatever challenges you have going on. For example, I had a woman come in, she could barely walk coming through the door because she was so inflamed. By the time she left, maybe her third time coming, she was able to walk unassisted. So there's nothing in here is punch you in the face. You know, it's relaxation, but it's not relaxation like you're sitting on the couch. It's deep levels of relaxation that's basically changing you from the inside out.
Okay.
Yeah.
Now, because these are magnetic kind of pulls, does this interfere with like pacemakers and or any other devices?
All low-level magnetism. So levels lower than the earth. Like you stand on the earth, right? That's a magnetic field.
Right.
So lower than the magnetic profiles of the earth is even less invasive than the earth.
Okay.
Yeah.
Are there any people that this is not safe for, like children, elderly, cancer patients, or anyone that should avoid this?
No, I've even put my dog into it. So.
Oh, okay. How was your dog's reaction?
He was chill.
He was just chilling.
Yeah.
Okay. Yeah. So this is the first part.
This is the first part of the circuit. Yeah. Now this service is how I started. This is called neurofeedback, aka brain training. So I started with one computer, one chair, 14 years ago.
This looks very like sci-fi.
It is very sci-fi. So these are sensors. They go into the scalp. They're read-only, so it's not electroshock therapy. Nothing's going to go into your brain, right?
Okay.
So it's only capturing your brainwave activity. Sends it to the computer. Now the computer is where the magic happens, because the computer is taking that information and sending it back to your brain in real time through a pair of headphones. Within the headphones, you maybe hear a skip, pause, or interrupt within music that you're listening to. That's letting you know that your brain is going off course. That's letting the brain know that it's going off course, not amber.
So would this work for like when you're like reading a book? Like a lot of times people will read something and they're like, oh shit, they'll realize I've been reading this whole page and I don't remember anything I just read.
You don't remember what you read because you're stuck in a stress response, and when you're stuck in a stress response, your neocortex shuts down, and then your decision making and processing is all diminished greatly. So you're not present. This is helping the brain to become present in the moment versus being stuck in last year's stressors or future projected anxiety.
So this is literally training your brain to be present when you're reading, when you're listening, when you're having conversations.
It's giving your brain the information that it's safe.
Okay.
Because that's the only thing that keeps you out of the present is worry and fear about the future, right?
Gotcha.
So when you're not worrying about threats, what happens? You become present. So now you have access to your faculties, like your memory, ability to focus and concentrate, mood, less reactivity to stressors.
Right.
So this happens with this technology.
Okay.
Well, really, it's not just this technology. It's comprehensive of all three of these technologies. It's brain, body on different levels. And the third level we're going to go to is going to really encapsulate these other two services.
And what are people's reactions usually coming out of this? Do they,
a lot of them are crying.
Okay.
Yeah, a lot of them come out crying. A lot of them deeply, again, back to that deep level of relaxation, because that's what's helping you do to become present. Now, all that weight you've been carrying all those years, which is what we call our demons or our baggage, you're letting it go.
Wow, okay.
Yeah. So this last part is called flotation therapy, or I like to call it digital detox. So this is 1,000 pounds of Epsom salt dissolved into a foot of water. So when you get in, you lie down, and because of the Epsom salt, you become buoyant, and it makes you float effortlessly. So this takes all the pressure off your joints, your ligaments, and your tissues of your body. And it's also because you're not dealing with gravity anymore, your brain can naturally shut down on its own. And we are magnesium deficient, 80% of Americans are, and magnesium is absorbable through the skin, it's transdermal, so you take it in, and now you're in a mineral bath at the same time. So most of us are overwhelmed because of the amount of stimulus that we're up against on a day-to-day basis. Well, this is stimulus reduction. So when you get in there, now your body can begin to process all the stuff that it hasn't processed for years because it hasn't been in a non-gravity-based environment before, other than being in your mom's womb.
Okay, so this is another 30 minutes.
Another 30 minutes. This is the end of this.
And this is the end. So after this, they've now spent an hour and a half plus, gone through a number of different things and probably emotions, and just kind of, how do people usually say they feel coming out of this? Well, this one in particular, again, drugged. This one just because again, most people are magnesium deficient. So when you give the body what it needs, all of a sudden your resources coming back online and you think it's miraculous. It's like, no, you've just been working in a deficit. So how long do the results from these things last, I guess?
What's your environment like?
Because if it's crazy, if you live a crazy, stressful life.
Your environment is why you come in a specific state in the first place. It's all stimulus, right? So if you're in an environment that has a lot of stimulus that's talking about, that's basically engaging the nervous system because it doesn't feel safe, well, you're going to eventually catch back up to that. So what we recommend is, as you do this, what happens is you have more conscious ability to make choices versus be knee-jerk reaction.
Right.
You're not making a choice, you're just responding. So now when you come in here, you get space. And now you can actually make choices to say, you know what, maybe I do need to leave that job because it's stressful. Maybe I need to leave that relationship. Maybe, because you got to do things differently. You can't heal in the same environment that caused the illness.
So is this something that, almost like a gym, the more that you continue to come, you build up your strength, your mental strength, and so it has long-term benefits over time, particularly.
Let's use the term resilience.
Okay.
So you build up resilience, but again, you're not taking away your brain's ability to protect you. That's needed. So you need to create and adopt better habits. It's the same way of you working out.
Right.
You know?
You still eat like crap, then yeah, it's not going to help as much.
Right. So Magnosphere is a magnetic therapy. All you need to know really, that's going to help to pull you out of that pattern, right? Reduce inflammation, because the main thing is resources. That's something I think that most people need to really realize, because they're beating themselves up for doing things that in the Bible, Jesus said, Father, forgive them for they know not what they do. That's because he understood that people were doing neurophysiological patterns of just what they've been conditioned and traumatized to do. And so these services, brain training is one of the next services, get that neuroplasticity to basically be able to shift and break those patterns, because neuroplasticity is the brain's being flexible. You heard the term, you can't teach an old dog new tricks. Yeah. Well, thank God that we're not dogs, right? We can learn, and the brain can learn and adapt and be flexible. So then the last service within that circuit is like flotation therapy. So we are overstimulated. You gotta understand that life is just nothing but a feedback mechanism, right? You're looking at me, you're talking, I gotta respond over and over and over, right? It's a feedback.
Everything requires something of you. Everything.
Right. Everything requires a response, and no response is still a response, right? So when you get into a float tank, it takes the pressure off your joints, your ligaments, your tissues, because this Epsom salt is making you float effortlessly. No gravity, or as reduced gravity as possible. And then you have no light, no sound. Stimulus restricted environment. So now your brain doesn't have to process. One of the biggest things is gravity. So when you reduce all the other ones, now what does your brain have time to do? Your brain and your body repair and process through all the unresolved chatter that's in there. This is why when people get in the float tank for the first time, they come out and they're scared. Well, what are you scared of? It's you in there by yourself. You're scared of here.
Right, because most people don't ever take the time to just be with themselves.
You know how many people I've asked before, do you sleep with the TV on? And how many people raise their hands and say, that's me? That's because you're addicted to stimulus. You can't even sleep with no noise. You constantly have to have something that you're chewing on, because when you have constantly something that you're chewing on, then you have to deal with yourself.
Ooh. Man, I've talked about this with different people kind of over the last few months. We've done little podcasts about it, but I think it's true. And it's like through my own personal journey, something that I've dealt with, and like forcing myself to deal with myself, forcing myself to step away from the busyness and the chatter and the static and everything and deal with myself. Because a lot of things, I think if you leave them unprocessed, unresolved, they build and build and build and build. So I think it's really important. And it's amazing that you don't have to do it alone. There are tools now with Inception that can help you.
And what we're doing is continue to educate on the front end. Like I said, experience, or education, experience, education. Because in my journey, when I was going through this whole process, I can come in and use the tools, but it took me a while to figure out, to be able to have this conversation with you. It took me 14 years of learning and pulling all the pieces together. That's what's happening. Oh, that's what's happening. Because energy cannot be created or destroyed, and it only can be transformed. So the more that you hold on to things, and we've heard the term hold on, but it's not you consciously holding on.
Right.
95% of your day-to-day living is unconscious. So that 5% of consciousness you have is getting his ass whooped by the 95%.
Right.
Right? So we need tools that's going to help me deal with the 95% of unconsciousness, which all these tools do, specifically a float tank. Because when you're in there about 25 minutes in, you go into what's called the theta wave state. The theta wave is where your subconscious lies. So when you can access this, is why meditation takes you to theta wave, but this takes you there like on steroids, because there's no stimulus that you're dealing with. So once you get there, now you have access to begin to go into the recycle bin and empty that out. But you don't empty the recycle bin by trying to fight against the thoughts. You empty it by just doing nothing but observing it. And that's even in just traditional meditation. People say, I can't meditate. What do you mean? If you just close your eyes and sit there, you'll meditate. But if I got a bunch of racing thoughts, yeah, that's why you're sitting to meditate, to empty it out. But the thoughts become so overwhelming that I don't even want to close my eyes.
Right.
So we need to use some other tools. That's why most people don't meditate. But when we come in here, it's like it's done for you in a very safe and efficient manner. It's not like pulling teeth. Meditation can feel like pulling teeth when you're so out of balance. And most society is so out of balance. And this is why when COVID hit, I'm looking on social media and I'm seeing how everybody's responding, and people are losing it. Because now, guess what? You went from a human doing to all of a sudden we're all equal. I don't care how rich you are. Ain't no toilet tissue up the street. Right.
We all figure it out.
We all trying to figure it out, right? So now you're back to being a human being, and you don't know what that feels like, because you've been conditioned about go, 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 do, grind, 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 hustle, hustle, hustle. Don't we know that grinding means to tear down?
Yes.
And then you're saying, well, sleep. I sleep when I die. Well, you're going to die a lot quicker. It took us about less than a week to demo this whole place when we first built it. How long did it take for us to build it after the demo? Over a week, like 90 days. It's easier to tear something down than it is to build it up. So if you're in grind mode and tear down mode, that's just unsustainable, right? You have to spend more time building than you do tear down. But we got it in reverse. That's why we're really a mentally ill society. You know what mental illness is? The definition of insanity is doing the same thing over and over, expecting different results. But the problem is, that's not what we're doing. We're doing the same thing and expecting the same results because we're familiar and certain with it.
expecting the same results, but wanting something different. Like we know, we know it's gonna be the same, but like we're saying, oh, I want this. It's like
the 5% of you consciously wants that. The 95% like, no, we don't.
Yeah, exactly. And it's true. It's true. Now you said something a minute ago. You say it took you 14 years to be able to articulate exactly what this does. So you've been working on this for a while. Yeah. You know, 30, Flirty, and Thriving, a big part of it is touching base with those who are following their passion. How did you become passionate about this?
My passion was in service. Okay. Being of service to people. So this had fit right in, and because I had a background in information technology, I have a technical type of mind, and I also have a very creative mind. I'm very balanced in that way, where I can go from building this place, designing this place. I had help with my mom. She would be like, you didn't do that by yourself. But she came in, she helped. But being on that creative side, that's where I really would like to be. But also at the same time, if you come to me and you have an issue, I can take you from start to finish. This is what you need to do. Boom, 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 boom. Now, when I first started, again, I had one service and I'm going through it all and I'm freaking out, like, because I'm thinking linear. So I don't want you or the listeners to have this linear thought process of, put it in a microwave, ding, it's done, you're healed. What did I just say? Energy cannot be created or destroyed, it only can be transformed. That energy has to dissipate. Those emotions that you've been suffocating and stuffing down, that has to come up. So oftentimes, let's talk about this. People talk about side effects, right? Is there any side effects? So they come out, I feel more anxious, I feel depressed, I feel angry. But guess what? You're feeling what you've been trying to suppress. So that when you can start to allow it to come up, then you can process through it, then you can integrate it.
And that's a great point. I think that when people start going to therapy, same thing. They start dredging up all of these old emotions and things like that. They have to deal with it, so they start feeling bad before they feel better. Right. COVID, I think, is a good example of when people were forced to stop working, the kids out of school, like all of this. They were literally forced to be with themselves for the first time and experienced a lot of anxiety and depression and all of this stuff because they have to deal with things they haven't dealt with. And not intentionally and not in a safe or healthy way.
Alcohol sales,
oh, for sure.
Weed sales.
Because
they don't want. So let me just stuff it down a different way. So that's really all we're doing, and we're emotionally obese. Absolutely. We can't see it. I can see it. I can look at people and see it because I've done it for so long and worked with so many people. I can look in their face and tell, yeah, they got this going on. Right. From a neurophysiological standpoint, not a diagnosis standpoint. You got ADD, you got bipolar. All these different things are nothing but adaptations to the environment. That's all symptoms are. Is this a response to your environment? So what shows up is what basically the mimicking what's in the environment. So bipolar. I used to have clients come in, she said had 3 daughters, all of them bipolar. And I said, is your household up and down emotionally? Yes. Your system is being conditioned to what is in the environment, mentally, emotionally, environmentally. So it's not rocket science, but complexity conceals, simplicity reveals. And I'm trying to help people make it simplistic to understand that your brain and body is doing everything it can do to help you survive and stay alive, because that's the only thing that helps you heal. So spend the money and the time to support your system to do that, because now you're going to experience life and have way more joy in your life, because you don't have that middleman anymore. Right. Between your emotions of feeling good, which is typically what you're going to buy, who you're going to get with, and all these other external factors. Yeah.
And like you said, I think a lot of people do come in like, what are the side effects? Is it safe? Is it going to interfere with my medication? Well, like, because we are conditioned to ask those kinds of questions and be concerned about that, instead of realizing the benefits that we can get from doing stuff like this and doing the work internally, instead of relying on medication for ADD, but to actually do the work ourselves. So how do you respond to people when they come in and they have a million, what do, you know, is it going to interfere? Is it safe? Has it been approved? Because I know you get them questions like, is it going to help me, you know, get rid of my bipolar or whatever?
But everything in here has research behind it. And also at the same time, you have to understand that people have to go through a process, right? When they say I have bipolar, I have all these different things, that's a belief system. First of all, you have bipolar response. You don't have bipolar disorder.
I like that.
You know?
Yeah.
It's a response to the environment. What does your environment look like? Don't come to us as we're going to be the fixers of you. We come here to support, you come here to support your brain and your body to do what it's naturally supposed to do. So when you walk out that door though, and you have that space now, you need to make the choice to do better, because when you know better, you do better, right? But where's the knowing better coming from? It's not coming from the 5% of consciousness anymore. It's coming from the 95% of consciousness, and that 95% of consciousness now has given you the ability to have brain power versus the 5% when you've been trying to will yourself to somewhere, you know? So those questions are valid, and I don't think there's anything wrong with medication. I don't think there's anything wrong with therapists. The problem is when I open, if I'm a painter and I open my toolbox and all I see in there is one paintbrush, I'm in trouble, right? I got to paint the whole place with one paintbrush. You need a wide range of tools, and we just so happen to have rollers. The rollers get the bulk of the work done, right? Now go to your therapist and get around those edges, you know? So and then too, your therapy is only as good as a therapist. The therapy is only as good as a therapist who's done their own internal work. And most of them, to be honest with you, they haven't.
What I've found in my own personal experience is that the therapists tend to have a lot of issues themselves, and that has brought them into that profession because they want to help others who experience it, but they haven't necessarily done the work.
Glad you say that, because everybody I meet in the field of helps, psychiatrists, social work, therapists, I always ask, so what you trying to heal? And they get taken aback because they don't know I know. I got into this because I was trying to heal something. I know you trying to heal something, right? You can't fool me. Because I know you don't just get into this type of work when you're not trying to help yourself. There ain't enough people in the world you're going to be able to heal that's going to heal you.
Exactly.
You have to do that work. But it's not their fault either. They're in a system that trains you a certain way. So you watch a movie and that a therapist, and as the person walks out the door, they like this, let me put that alcohol right there, and got their bottle out. Why? Because they suffer from vicarious trauma and compassion fatigue by listening to your stories over and over and over. So now that story that you've been sharing with them for the last 3 years, they've internalized that. Now they have, you know, not just mental, it's physical. So when you talk about the things like your lupuses and your fibromyalgias and all these autoimmune and chronic illnesses, that's all mental, emotional, and it's all trauma related. Dr. Bob Scare, neurologist out of Colorado, been doing the work for 30 years, can testify to that. It's all trauma related, but we always think, I ain't never had no trauma. But there's different types of trauma. You have hard traumas, which is an event that can happen. You can remember you got in a car accident, it happened on this day, it was raining, Soft traumas. What if you grew up in a household where there was constant little remarks? Could be little remarks. They don't even have to be in your face. Hey, Amber, you ain't that smart. Over and over and over. Your body has to keep responding to those little jabs and those little threats. And it's more impactful because if I have soup, I'm gonna make soup, and you know, you put, let's say, meatballs in the soup, and you say, David, I don't like meatballs. Okay, I'm gonna take the meatballs out the soup. But I put hot sauce in there too, and you say, David, I don't like hot sauce. It's gonna be hard getting that hot sauce off. So which one is hard trauma and which one is soft trauma? Hard trauma is the meatballs. Soft trauma is the hot sauce. I gotta be an alchemist and a magician to kind of get that. So when you come here, people are coming with both. So that's where the process, so every you know, I was talking about sports, right? So everybody who's even in the sports world or fitness world, your obesity is not based on what you put in your body. Who chose what you put in your body? Not the food. The food didn't jump in there. It's the mind. I'm trying to self-soothe. Or the obesity to be obese or have, you know, not to be what's considered attractive, so nobody could think I'm attractive. Because maybe the incident that happened to you were younger, maybe you were raped, maybe you were molested, and your brain is like, look, we never gonna experience that again, so put all this weight on you and nobody's gonna ever want to do that to you again. These are all weird ways that the brain like formulates to try to protect you.
Yep. So let me go back a little bit to you starting this, and your passion was because it came from service, wanting to help people. What exactly was the process? Like you said, you started out with just one thing, and obviously it's grown over the years. What was it like? First of all, let me ask you, did you have a different job or a profession before getting into this? I know you did IT.
I lived in Miami for about 6 years. So I lived in South Florida, all around South Florida, and I installed all the computers in Dade and Broward School Board schools, and then I switched and went to work for Kaplan University. That was more education. I want to call it educational sales, even though they say it's not a sales job. Well, yeah, if I got a goal to meet, that's called sales, right? So I was down there doing those things, but and I remember one guy told me, his name was Yusef. He said, man, you always calm, collected. He didn't know I had so much anxiety. Like, I didn't know I had so much anxiety, but I believed my bullshit. I believe my own hype. Yeah, I am calm and collected. No, I was frozen. When you're frozen, you're locked into your emotion. So you just look calm and collected, but really, man, those emotions are just boiling under the inside. And people who go deep into freeze, those are the people who can go do mass shootings because they're disassociated. Yeah. They can go kill somebody, go home and cook some Pop-Tarts, like that, you know.
They say you always got to be careful of the quiet ones. Some of the scary.
Well, that's true, because their emotion is not that they've mastered. Some people think people have mastered like spirituality, and I just don't react. No, you frozen. You know. Yeah. So when you come in here and do the services, guess what comes up? The emotions. So I've seen couples come in, one is in fight or flight response and one is in freeze response. They go hand in hand. They're a perfect couple because the person who's fighting can always do what they want to do to the person who's frozen because they're not going to say nothing. This one doesn't have boundaries. This one doesn't enforce his boundaries. Perfect. So then you come in here and you start doing services. I say, don't bring, they say, this is a great couple's gift. I said, maybe. You know, maybe if you want to stay a couple, right, because the emotions come up, and now, what happened to you? Why are you acting like that? Why are you doing that? Oh, because it's now this person is tired, and it all comes up, and it ain't just what's coming up from what you did, it's what everybody's done. So that's why I say this is a whole process, and our external world is all just basically it's a projection of internal. So you can go home and look at your household. It's all based on what's going on in your brain and your body. You know, everybody you hang around is all based on your brain and your body. So that's all I ask people. If I'm about to date, you been in therapy? Right. You know, take any medication. It's like who you talking? What therapist you go to? It's like, no, seriously, how did you handle? Well, you know, you just what? It's important,
especially I feel like the older that we get to have those conversations, like, have you dealt with your past traumas? Are you aware of what they are? Like,
I see so many people starting to ask those questions, and it's a very important question, not so that you can throw a person away, but so you can have a level of awareness so I can know how to empathize with you. You know, seek first to understand, then to be understood. Oh, that's why you're doing that. So let me make sure that I don't XYZ. I don't want to walk on eggshells, but at the same time, I need to navigate so we can move through this.
Right.
And that's fine when you have two parties who both have a level of awareness, like, yo, we both got stuff, let's work on it. But when you got two parties who don't know anything, that's just a time bomb.
Yeah.
And then we also think that the spark that we have between each other is actually attraction. It's attraction, but it's trauma attraction. It's a bomb, it's gonna blow up on you. When you come together and there's all this energy, all this chemistry, that's scary.
I say that, I said that butterfly feeling, most people think it's like butterfly. I'm like, that is nerves telling you to get the hell out.
Yes, I had somebody I went out with and I couldn't eat on like 2 or 3 dates, and I was like, man, what's wrong? Like, I must really like this person. I'm like, nah, man.
It's all
this person turned out to be very narcissistic.
So let's go back a little bit. So you were at Kaplan University doing sales, and how did you go from that to this?
Panic attacks, you know. And full-blown vomiting panic attacks. I fell on my back playing basketball, and that's when I just started. It just, because you got structurally, that has to do with your mental health too. Again, your whole being. I don't know why we just think of mental health as, I always do like this, because we like think about our mind in this little box, like it's the mind. That's the only thing that's it. It's like this is the vessel that's responding to the mind, right? So this is where all the landmines exist.
Right.
The landmines of the mind.
Right.
Yeah, because it's responding to threat. And so when that threat is not discharged, it's there. So the more you keep adding on physical or emotional traumas, the more your likelihood of surviving the next trauma decreases. So me falling on my back and then me experiencing, you know, childhood traumas, and I had a great childhood. That's the thing. I had a great childhood. But there's still little things that happen in my childhood. Car accidents. You know, my parents didn't grow up in great environments. They grew up in alcoholic households. So they come out of that situation with heightened level of anxiety. So even though they know that's bad and they want to get out of that, they're still in the home, and there's still levels of anxiety that I pick up as a kid.
Right.
You know, so you go look, there's no one event that happened to me that just made this take place. It's a multitude of everything. And so by the time I turned 27, I can't function the same way because I got too many tabs open in my browser, you know. So I need to close out some tabs, and that's what took me 14 years to figure out how all these systems work in a very broad overview way too, to be able to make sense of it for people, versus just like, because if you see a lot of this stuff and you hear these things, this conversation has been happening forever. There's a lot of seminars going on, but it don't have people like me in there. Right. We're not even gravitating to that type of information, but I did, and I took that information and say, okay, how does this make sense to me and to everybody else? And that's what Inception is. What type of challenges did you face and had to overcome in order for Inception to happen? Oh man, financial, constant financial, because you know, like most people, they're not spending money like at that time on this thing, you know, but I never even thought about that, because I just understood business. Yeah. I just understood business. Most businesses fail within their first 5 years. So is it just about the field I'm in, or I'm just a business guy? And I'm just like, I have that. My dad is an African-American man who played sports, who grew up in a not so great environment, and he's hardcore. He'd bet everybody. I bet you I can do this. I bet you I can do that. I bet you. So he bet me a lot growing up. So as a kid, I gravitate to that belief and will. And that's my will and belief. Like, no, I'm a figure it out. Right. And so that's just been, you know, people, you call it the Kobe Bryant or the Michael Jordan mindset. It's just like, man, I'm just going to be focused. That's why I can go in a float tank and do 35 days straight, you know, an hour every day, because my internal world, I'm going to go there. Did you have a lot of people looking at you like, mental health gym, mental what? Like, what are you doing? This doesn't. You gotta think, I didn't create the term mental health gym until 2 years ago. So before that, it was Neuro Fitness, it was Inception, but it didn't have a title. So I didn't care. I looked at everybody else like y'all was crazy, not me. That's seriously. I'm like, no, I don't know what's wrong with y'all. I'm not the, no, y'all I'm out of the matrix. I'm Morpheus trying to help you out. Red pill, blue pill, which one you want? So now we're coming out and people seeking me out saying, hey, and I'm like, you sure? You sure you want this?
Right.
But when you do, let me tell you, like, it's just your health, man, your level of confidence in yourself, your ability to, I'll use the word manifest. We're all manifesting. Just what are you manifesting? You're manifesting the life you want or don't want. But being able to manifest the life you want, you know, and that comes from doing that internal work and knowing what you really want. I think what we really want is always placed inside of us. So I've been on purpose, and I'm okay with being on purpose, even if I suffer. But what's suffering for me in this? I'm not homeless. I'm not, you know, it's stressful, but I got tools to help me with the stress. So no, I never looked at people who thought it was wacky, because I'm just a progressive person. I've always been. My parents have always been. So that's just what it is. I don't listen to that noise. Okay,
great. So if people want to learn more about Inception, if they want to follow you, how can they find you, or how can they learn more about Inception?
So one of the best platforms is Instagram for us. So you can follow me at Mr. David McCullar, MCCULLAR. And Inception's page is at I_AM_Inception. I_AM_Inception. Perfect. And also you can visit us on our website, inceptionep.com.
What's EP stand for?
Enhanced potential.
Okay, all right. Well, thank you so much. This has been really enlightening for me, and I know you gave me a tour earlier. I'm really excited to come back and try some of the circuits. And
you know, when people say try, I always wonder, why do we use try so much? Why don't you just come and do it?
Yeah, because I think like the thing is like, I'm gonna try it. Like if I
try is like I'm hesitant.
Yeah, like I'm gonna come and try it out, see if I like it.
Even if you try it, you're still doing it. So
this is true.
Buy in and do it, and if you buy in, just like anything else, it's gonna change your life.
For sure.
You really buy into it and do it.
Yeah, I'm excited. Well, I'm gonna come back and I'm gonna do a circuit. I'm gonna do both circuits.
Okay.
Very excited. But thank you so much for taking the time to talk to me today.
Thank you for having me. The other circuit is the detox.
Okay.
So detoxification is good for your mental health as well, because when you have molds, mildews, other toxins, your body is using resources to basically handle that. If it's using those resources to handle those threats, you think you're going to be able to solve math problems in class? No, it's using those resources. So the first one we use is called it's an infrared sauna, far infrared. So it's not like your traditional sauna. Your traditional sauna actually heats up the outside air. So this is heating you up from the inside out. So it's actually penetrating the cell tissues of the body much deeper than an outside, traditional sauna. So again, when I was talking about molds, mildews, and mercury, all that begin to come out of your body. So
explain to me what a circuit means. In this,
well, you think about circuit in the gym model, right? You're going to different stations to create a specific result. It's really typically when you do circuits, you're going to do something that has to do with whole body.
Yeah.
This is kind of our thought of whole body. And because when people think about mental health, they only think about psychological, but they never think about the body. But the body is more impacted through the psyche than anything.
Right, that makes sense.
It's the domino.
So those first 3 services were part of one circuit that you would recommend kind of combine.
I recommend everyone do a circuit.
And then this is a second circuit with the infrared. Okay, gotcha.
Yeah. Okay. This one is called halo therapy, and halo therapy is just a cool way of saying salt therapy. So we actually take pharmaceutical grade salt, put it through a specialized grinder that actually crushes it to microparticles. So it blows in a fine mist, just like an aerosol spray. So it's blowing in and it's getting into your nasal pathways and it's attaching to the lungs. So it can help bring out things like mucus, can attach to things like bacteria and viruses as well. So it's not a cure for COVID by any means, but it's definitely going to help to clear the lungs, because that's one of the things that COVID is really attacking is the lungs. That's why you see so many people on ventilators. So being able to sit into this is 30 minutes. Again, you're breathing in that salt. And because salt is ionized as well, it becomes, a grounding effect to your body as well. So inflammation reduction as well.
And are there any risks associated with that? Just the idea of like breathing in salt?
No.
Okay.
No. Actually, they found out this through sitting in a salt mine, and they found that people had no respiratory issues.
Now I'm noticing that there's like 2 chairs and everywhere we go. Do people typically do this together, or can they do it together?
In pairs. Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yep. Except for this last one. So this is called the inflow. Some people call it the space suit. So what happens is when you get in this suit, it actually, you zip it in, get in, and it's actually, there's chambers throughout this whole suit that blows up, and it's helping moving the lymphatic system gently. It's based on the Vater method, pushing the lymphatic system upward, because most of us, our lymph is very congested because of the amount of toxins we constantly take in. So this is really helping the lymph system to remove its own waste. Really good for things like, I know women like to hear cellulite reduction, fat loss, but this overall too, it helps because once you can move waste out of your body, your mood does greatly go up. Think about if you had trash in your house and it was overflowing and you took it out, all of a sudden you feel better because you know you were being impacted by the constant waste being present there. So this is the last part. Again, this is a 30-minute service as well. So that concludes actually being able to do both circuits. You don't necessarily do those circuits on the same day.